You're listening to Shark Bone, a Las Vegas role-playing game podcast. This is episode 5, being recorded Monday, April 12, 2010. My name is Devin.
I'm Jarvis.
Welcome to the show again.
Hello, people. What are we talking about today, Devin?
Today, GM Garden topic is the movie Gattaca from 1997 with Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, Jude Law, directed by Andrew Niccole, something. Niccole.
Yeah, who knows?
I have no idea how that's actually said.
I like your little information, your little bio there. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I figured I'd put it in there now.
That appeals to the movie geek in me. The guy that used to write movie reviews. I like it. So, Gattaca is one of my favorite movies, actually. I was just telling you earlier, it was probably one of my top 10.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. One of my roommates introduced it to me back in 2003, I think. And I watched it. I was like, I love this movie. So I went out and I bought it.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic science fiction film.
It's not very much, there's not very much action in it.
No. So
I was kind of struggling to pull story ideas from it.
Yeah, kind of a detective story drama kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really good movie, but I think we're going to have a challenge adapting it to a role-playing game.
We'll see. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice, but who knows? Because some of the stuff that came out of Paycheck was far above anything that I expected. So who knows what we'll find in Gattaca. I know you have some notes written down.
I do.
Because you did your homework and I didn't. But that's okay.
I wasn't going to tell anybody, but...
Oh, that's okay. I'll fess up. I watched all the other movies when I was supposed to. That counts for something.
It does. You're at an A- now.
That's true. 4 out of 5 now, right?
Yeah, something like that. Alrighty. My favorite part of this is it's an underdog. Oh, geez, I can't talk today. It's an underdog story. True underdog.
I was excited about the underdark topic. I didn't know what you were pulling out of there. Underdog. Absolutely. Because the guy Ethan Hawke's character is the what do they call them? Normies? No. A godchild, a faith birth. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So has all these like normal human genetic defects and whatnot that are built into his system, and humanity has solved for all those problems. They've gotten rid of nearsighted and farsightedness, and they've gotten rid of heart conditions. And all this kind of stuff, like all basic things that they've been able to get rid of or eradicate. So people are able to choose the child, almost like the actual
choose hair color.
Yeah, the fertilized egg that they want.
Yeah,
because they fertilize like 6 different ones or something, and then
and
then they just pick one, and they go, "This one looks,
all right.
This one looks healthy. We'll take it."
Exactly.
So yeah, Ethan Hawke's character was born, randomly. By the normal natural selection process, and so he ends up with a heart condition, and he can't see very well. He needs glasses or contacts and stuff like that. And he's trying to struggle in a society that's trying to get him down, because society has kind of lent itself to giving all the best jobs, like astronaut, to the people that are genetically going to succeed at that.
Definitely. Your resume is your DNA. They look at you and they're like, all right, you got this DNA. I know you're going to succeed.
Yeah, they can say,
it's in your genes.
This is how smart you are. This is how fast you'll be able to run. This is the condition of your heart. So with all these things combined, you'll be able to make a fine astronaut, and we'll just give you the experience necessary. And they didn't want to do that for Ethan Hawke, but he wanted to succeed anyway.
Yeah.
So
he lied about who he was. It was basically identity theft, but the guy whose identity he was using actually gave it to him.
He got something out of the deal.
Yeah, he did.
So your underdog story, you like the fact that it's an underdog story?
I like the fact that it's an underdog story, but I think it would be really cool to make a game an underdog story. Because, you could argue that all games are underdog stories because you always start at, like, level 1 or something like that.
I don't know.
But you're always
they definitely
a character.
Games like Exalted, some of the superhero games, like if you can stat out Superman when you start the game, you are not an underdog. You are nobody's underdog.
That's true.
And some games allow you to play Superman. But a lot of games do start you at level 1 and whatnot.
Yeah. And I think it would be cool to have everyone in the story expect you to fail. And they like coddle you. You're made of glass.
Okay.
They're like, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Or you can't do that. You can't. So don't even try.
Now, since most games are about being heroic, and they're about telling epic tales and about kind of larger-than-life or over-the-top heroes, how do you mesh that with your underdog idea? Or are you saying it would be good to have a change?
I think it would be good to have a change.
Okay.
But I think most rule systems lend to the heroic
usually
story.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's the kind of story you usually want to tell when you're playing a role-playing game.
Usually.
But, yeah, I don't know how exactly I would model the underdog in the rules. But, yeah, I think it would be fun to tell an underdog story where, I don't know, maybe all the NPCs are like 15 levels higher than you. Everyone. And you're level 1.
That would be interesting. I would play that game.
Yeah, they're like, you can't do this. So
I'm a 15th level cook, and I can push you around.
I'm a 15th level cook. You're a first level warrior. It doesn't matter. I'll smack you over the head with my frying pan.
That's right. I have a plus 40 in frying pan. You're in trouble. Okay, so I think the idea of doing an underdog story would be neat because let me organize my thoughts. The society in the movie Gattaca is what's kind of keeping the underdogs down.
Yes.
Because society says these people that have been genetically chosen are far superior, and they actually use the word valid in the movie.
Yes, they do.
So they are the valid citizens, humans, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else, all the natural births,
they become second-class citizens.
Yeah, they're absolutely second-class citizens. They're minorities. They're like profiled against and stereotyped against, and to the point of actually being like segregated and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it would be neat to play a typical story, be it modern day or your typical D&D fantasy or whatever, and have the entire party be like a company of goblins or something.
Yeah.
Like kobolds. Nobody likes the kobolds.
No, nobody does.
Everybody is against them, and you're not going to be allowed into the village and all that stuff. So you can still have your heroic tale, but you're starting as this group of kobolds or halflings or whatever.
Right.
In a society that doesn't really care about you or doesn't like you, and that would be interesting to me.
That would be.
I would like to see that game.
Yeah, that would be fun.
And then it would make the epic stories you tell about killing dragons or solving crimes and stopping evil masterminds all that much cooler because you've done it on your own.
Yeah.
Pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and whatnot, and society didn't help. They weren't like, here, take our legendary holy weapon that has protected our city for generations, because they're not going to give that to the little kobold guy.
No, they're not.
They don't trust him, so you got to do that on your own. That's kind of cool.
Yep. One of the other aspects that I really liked to the movie was that the story is basically, there are a lot of investigation themes in it.
Absolutely.
And I thought it was cool if you adapted Gattaca to a role-playing game, your PCs would be on the other end of the investigation. They would be investigated instead of doing the investigation.
Okay, so have PCs that start off on the wrong side of the law, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean...
And they're constantly trying to stay a step ahead
yes.
of the authorities. That would be cool.
Yes, it would be.
What kind of stories could you put that into in a game? Because you don't, like, most people don't want to play villains. They don't want to play bad guys.
Right. And Ethan Hawke's character wasn't really a bad guy. He was just the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes.
That's what he was. And I think you could do something like that in a role-playing game. Say, who are you? What are you doing? Where are you? Where do you live? And then all of a sudden, maybe the king's wife says that somebody stuck into a room and raped her or something. And then there is some evidence that indirectly points to you, but due to your station, everyone's like, yep, it was him.
Because you're just an underclass or lower class citizen, you're a slave, something like that.
Exactly. It's guilty until proven innocent.
Okay. I was thinking, like, if you wanted to keep the players being, hero types, then you could play in a darker setting, something like the Midnight campaign setting.
Okay.
Which is for typical D&D, and the premise of that one is basically that the Dark Lord has already won and controls the world.
Yeah.
So if Sauron's in charge, then it's going to be his police and his rules that are in charge. So you could play heroes that are still trying to defeat evil and whatnot, but when you defeat evil, like that evil duke of whatever section of land that you just killed happens to be, he has friends on the force, and that police force or those inquisitors or whatever are trying to hunt you down because
you gotta look for a scapegoat.
Yeah, you're killing political figures, and of course they're evil political figures, but it's an evil government. So that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, good old fashioned like running from the cops story.
Yeah,
that's good times.
Yeah, it is. And then one other item that I thought was cool in the movie was Ethan Hawke. His character, what was his name?
Oh, I don't know, man.
Anton was his brother. His name was Vincent. Okay.
Yeah, Vincent.
So Vincent and Anton. Oops.
All right. Sorry about that.
Vincent and Anton are brothers. Anton is an in vitro baby. He's one of the perfect members of society, and Vincent is the faith-born. He's conceived naturally.
He's the invalid.
So they always have this competition when they're young, called chicken, where they go to the river and they swim out as far as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just swim back. See who chickens out first and swims back to the beach. I thought that was a really cool competition between them.
Okay.
They're like, who's the alpha? Or, who's bigger, who's more important?
Sorta.
Let's swim out there and see who chickens out first.
Who's got bigger balls?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would like to see more of that in traditional role-playing games, because you don't really. I mean, if an NPC says, I'm better than you, and an NPC says, no, you're not, and he's like, yes, I am, I'll prove it, and the PC whips out a sword, kills him.
Okay, so what are you saying?
I like where the werewolf competitions, where it's always like, I'm going to challenge you, and we're going to challenge to a chess game, or a race, or...
So just more like that. More friendly competitions?
Yeah, more friendly competitions, because that's what we would do in real life. If you and I were to decide we wanted to have a competition to see who was better at something, we would...
not kill each other?
Not kill each other.
You're right.
I hope not.
You're right. We wouldn't. Because you would lose. No. Okay. So you want more friendly competition. What kind of things in a role-playing game would we have a friendly competition over? Is it over who gets that +1 sword, or is it over
it could be
who gets to present themselves to the king and accept the reward for saving his daughter?
It could be anything, yeah.
Okay. I think that comes from the fact that a lot of people, when they sit down to play games, they work real hard. Like Doug, who we had on the show, episode 3?
Yes.
Fantastic. Our friend Doug Dalton. We had him on the show, and he came from this very traditional mode of gaming. And in that traditional mode of gaming, inter-party conflict was something that you struggled hard to avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
And we put him in our game, and we come from like a World of Darkness background and stuff like that, and we love it. The inter-party conflict is the way we go. If the climax of the story ends up being that one of the player characters has been secretly working for the bad guys and betrays the entire rest of the party, that's a hell of a story in my book. But that would blow Doug's mind if something like that happened. So I think that's the reason why that friendly competition stuff doesn't really come up, is because a lot of games, or maybe just a lot of gamers, work really hard to try and avoid that, because they don't... If there's that +1 sword and my barbarian wants it, but so does your paladin, if we have a friendly competition to see who gets it, then your barbarian might be resentful towards my paladin.
Right.
Or, I think I just switched the barbarian and paladin.
I think I understood the analogy.
Either way. So I think that's why people are afraid to do that. So they try to handle it peacefully. Okay, well, you take that one, I'll take the next one. So that they can handle it all friendly and kosher. Yeah. Instead of having a little rivalry.
There should be rivalry.
I think so.
If you're a player, engender rivalry in your game. Just make sure you're letting the other players know.
That's key right there, actually.
Yes.
Like, if you're the thief, go ahead and steal some money from the party treasury, but make sure all the other players at the table know that. And maybe even take the time to say, hey guys, I want my little rogue character to start pilfering from the party's gold. Is that cool? Like, I think it'll make the story interesting and be really fun and funny. But if that's gonna hurt somebody, then I'm not going to do that because, I want the players to be happy.
Yeah, you don't want to piss off your friends.
Yeah.
You want to piss off the characters.
Exactly.
Because there is a difference.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, there absolutely is a difference. But a lot of people don't play that way.
That's true.
But, so yeah, a little friendly competition, and rivalry is what makes drama. And if you look at Firefly, then, Jane and Captain Mal are always going at it.
Yeah, they are.
And
the Doctor.
And Mal and Simon are always going at it. And that's what creates tension, and that's what creates interesting stories, and because then the Doctor goes against Mal's wishes one day because it's just been too much. It's been getting to him.
Yeah.
And then Jane tries to sell the Doctor out, underneath the Captain's nose and all this stuff. And that's where the good stories come from. And if everybody's just working together as this solid team the entire time, basically you can kind of think of it like, if you ever watched the Super Friends show when you were a kid, or if you're watching Justice League now.
I never watched either of those.
All right. Well, in my non-comic expert assessment of the story, the Justice League is Batman, Superman, all those guys from DC. Right. And they seem to be this completely coherent team that's on the same side on every issue. And sometimes Batman will go off alone, but it's usually to do a part of the job that the rest of the team couldn't handle or something like that.
Okay.
And that's about it. But so they handle it. Like, they're the super team, and stuff comes up, and Aquaman, you deal with the fish, and I'll go burn some things with my heat vision, and Batman can go beat up some criminals, because that's what we do. But then if you compare that to, like, the X-Men, where you constantly have this friction between Cyclops and Wolverine, where Wolverine's always trying to be the rogue and always trying to go off on his own and do his own thing and not listen to orders.
Then Cyclops is like, I'm the leader, do what I say.
Yes, Cyclops is like, I'm the leader, and I mean, in the movies, they work hard to make him look like a prick, but in the comics, in the old cartoon, Cyclops he just wants to, like, run a coherent team. He wants to keep everybody safe. And if Wolverine's running on his own all the time, then they can't watch out for him, and Wolverine isn't there to watch out for them.
Right.
And that's not what Cyclops wants. But so that creates interesting stories. And to me, I think that's why, like the X-Men team, the dynamic works a lot better than the one for the Justice League. Now, I don't read the comics, so
I don't either.
Justice League might be mind-blowing fiction right now. I have no idea. I'll go ahead and put out that disclaimer.
We're not comic experts.
No. Not
by a long shot.
That's why we're not doing a comic podcast.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think inter-party conflict, or not even conflict, but just inter-party friction and tension is the way to go. If you want to blow it out into conflict, that's an individual choice that you and your gaming group can make, but some definite friction and tension it goes a long way, even just friendly rivalry, yeah.
Yeah, it does. And you never know what story decisions are going to come from it. You might decide something that kind of puts that seed of friction between your character and someone else's now, and then 3 games down the line, their character still remembers that little friction incident. And so they'll say, you might be hanging onto a ledge for your life, and they're like, well, you did this thing that I really hated, and you're not going to die from this. I'll let you fall.
That would be fun. That would be good times. Very cool.
Alrighty. Let's move into our Grease Monkey segment.
Fantastic.
Today we're talking about identical physical and social resolution.
What does that mean, Devin?
It's a mouthful, I'll tell you that. What it means is most games, most of the large games anyway, they concentrate on the physical, at least they seem to me to concentrate on physical resolution. You know, what happens when you swing your sword?
The vast majority of games have 30 or so pages of the rule book dedicated to combat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like what happens when you aim at someone and pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. You know, what are your chances to hit them?
Yes.
And then usually for social resolution, it's you roll a single die, add a number. If it beats some other number, you succeed.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear somebody down. They don't have any inherent resistance.
Yes.
Things like that.
There's also no tactics to use.
Exactly.
There's no strategy in it. It's just my persuasion is 15, and I'm going to add this D20 to it. And now I'll go ahead and say that a lot of the World of Darkness games work really, really similar because they don't really go out of their way to make social conflict that much more interesting either.
Right.
So in those, it's just, I'm going to roll my charisma or my presence plus my subterfuge and lie to the guy. And if I roll high enough, it worked.
Yep.
And why do so many games make that different? Then I'm just going to roll my firearms and shoot the guy. And if I roll higher, he's dead. Because that's not how it works.
It's not.
They always drag it out, make it more interesting, and they put in all these rules and say that the firearm you're using gives you like a +2 bonus, and you're at a range difficulty because he's too far away, and he's wearing armor, and it's dark outside, and all this stuff. But when it comes to talking to the guy, it's really simple.
I think it comes from the roots of the role-playing game.
In the war games?
Yeah, they come from the war games.
You're probably right.
And the war games all they modeled was the physical aspect.
I was thinking about it today, and I was thinking that with D&D being like the first role-playing game, kind of, I think part of that comes from the way the game was designed, and maybe that's because of its wargaming roots, or maybe not. But they just said, we want to do adventures about heroes going into dungeons and killing monsters and taking their stuff.
Yeah.
You didn't need social rules.
You didn't, because it was Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, the game wasn't going to allow you to talk the orc down. Please give the princess back.
Because orcs are evil, and they need to die.
Well, yeah, and that's what the game wanted. And if that's what your game should be about, then that's totally cool, because you obviously don't need the social rules. If I'm making a game about politics within the UN, I don't need rules on how to punch a guy in the face, because that's not going to happen in the middle of like a delegation,
right?
A big meeting of Congress or something.
And if it does, your character's probably not going to be participating in that.
Yeah, then I'll get dragged away and put in prison or something. You're absolutely right. But a lot of games, a lot of the stories I like to tell can go either way. You can try to if that bandit, has a hostage, you can try to talk him down and get him to give up the girl, or you can shoot him in the head with an arrow. And those are two different ways to handle the situation. And I think you should be able to choose which one. I think they should be just as effective.
I think so too. I've played a few games where we've either had found rules for making social resolution identical to the physical resolution, or we've crafted them. First one that comes to mind is Savage Worlds. They really don't have in the core rules social conflict really isn't the same as physical conflict. Not
really. You're just allowed to do a bluff, and the way it's written, you can use your bluff skill, but the only thing that does is put your opponent at a -2 or a taunt. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Of. So if you taunt your opponent, he doesn't run away crying. He doesn't pee his pants. You just taunt him, and now he's at a -2 for his next combat action because you've shaken his courage a little bit.
Yeah, and that's nice and all, but it's not quite the effect I want.
No, I don't think so.
So I found online, I don't know where, I have it bookmarked somewhere, and I'll link it in the show notes.
All right.
But there were some rules that made social resolution identical to physical resolution. So you could basically have a combat encounter that was social.
Which I think is very, very cool.
I do too. What they did was they created, because in Savage Worlds you have a parry and a toughness.
Okay.
Parry is how dodgy you are. And
sure. Your ability to block the blow.
Yeah. And toughness is how much damage you can take.
Okay.
You can absorb. And so they were like, okay, that works for physical. Let's just make a social parry and a social toughness. So, social parry is akin to how how witty you are.
Sure, your ability to shrug off the
Shrug off
taunt,
an insult.
or shrug off the insult.
Something like that, yeah. And then toughness is just, how strong your character is, just like how much you can take before it starts wearing you down.
Like self-confidence, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go, he called me a chicken, but, I know I'm not a chicken, so that's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it really worked.
It did work.
Yeah. And I really like that. You did something similar in the World of Darkness for our Orpheus game?
I did. In the World of Darkness, you attack an opponent with your combat skill, and he has a defense that he uses to dodge it, and then he has a health track. And so any damage that gets through his defense is then applied to his health.
Right.
As health levels. So once you do enough damage to his health, he's unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do whatever you want with him. You can kill him. You can drag him away. You can run from him. Whatever.
Right.
So I basically applied the exact same thing to social mechanics. And I gave you a social defense that was based on some of your social skills. And I gave you a social health track. In the new World of Darkness, they actually bring in a resolve skill for social. You have composure.
Mm-hmm.
And composure is your ability to, it's like your self-confidence. Like, he called me a chicken, but I have a lot of composure. I'm composed, so it doesn't bother me.
Right.
So I just use that for health, and base that just like stamina is used to determine physical health. Composure was used to determine social health. And every attack success over their social defense applied to their social health. And when they were socially unconscious, or the equivalent of, just like if you knock somebody out physically, you could tie them up, you could throw them over a cliff, you could end their life, you could just run from them. I wanted it to be the same socially. So if you socially whittled somebody's health down to nothing, then they were immediately convinced of your argument. Like if you were trying to say, no, I'm actually the father of that child, for whatever reason. Then if you brought their social health to zero, they were convinced.
Right.
They believed you. Or if you were trying to intimidate that guy, then you had to bring his social health to zero, and then he was intimidated. And he would run away. Because I wanted social characters to be just as effective as physical characters.
I think it's a lot cooler, and I think it's more realistic that way. Because how many times in real life do you walk up to someone and you say, "You're a moron," and then they run away crying?
Yeah, not that often.
Yeah, not that often. There's usually some
It'd
back and forth.
It'd be kind of funny, though, if it did happen. That would be a good time. But yeah, not that often. There's a lot of back and forth. And what I like about... Because just like we like strategy and detail in our combat rules, I like them in our social rules because it reminds me of like Robin Hood movies or pirate movies when, they're fighting with swords, but then there's this witty banter that's happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And that witty banter sometimes can be enough to actually shake that guy's confidence, and then you can get the sword in there. Or, a lot of stuff is just handled through, intimidation. There's a fantastic scene that I'm trying to think of in a movie, and I almost have it in my head, but it's not coming to me. Oh, Princess Bride.
I was just going to say that.
There you go. At the very end of the movie, where he, between bluff and intimidation, he totally tricks Prince Humperdinck into believing that he has all his sword skill and battle prowess, and that he's no longer incapacitated, and he just cowers Prince Humperdinck. And then Prince Humperdinck is like, okay, yeah, you're obviously a badass and you're going to gut me, so I'm just going to sit down and let her tie me up.
Yeah.
And yeah, the actual climactic battle, doesn't involve swordplay in that movie.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And that's really, really cool.
Absolutely. I think that option should be available in your game.
Definitely. It should be.
Now, one thing that's really interesting, what do you think about this, Devin? A lot of games have, basically one health track. So if I punch you in the face, it gives you like 5 points of damage. And then if I call you a coward, it gives you another 4 points of damage. And as I continue to go, eventually you're just reduced to nothing.
I actually like that because I think it can be realistic, but it makes sense. if you punch me and I have this giant bruise on my arm and it hurts, I'm more susceptible to have my feelings hurt or something because I'm already feeling kind of crappy.
Yeah.
And then so someone insults me or something, so I'm feeling worse. And then someone comes along and they kick me and they hurt me again, so I'm feeling even worse.
Okay. So like Spirit of the Century has a composure track and a health track, I believe.
That drives me nuts.
For stress boxes. So if I get punched, I take health damage, and if I get taunted or intimidated, I take composure damage.
Right.
I take social damage. And it's like social, mental mix. It's partly your willpower and partly your composure.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of neat, but I prefer it when those two whittle away the same damage track.
As do I.
And I think it would be really cool if I have, say, a witty sidekick-like character, or a con man, or, some big intimidating brute or something, right. And then you're playing the skilled fencer. I think it would be interesting if we're facing off against the villain. You can strike him with your sword, and I can strike him with my iron gaze or my intimidating snarl or something, and both of us are being effective at whittling away his health and resolve.
Yes, that would be very cool.
I think it's cool.
I do too.
And part of that comes from social characters are actually some of my favorites because I love playing. I always love the idea of the con man. Or the guy who's like a bluff artist.
Okay.
So the ability to use like subterfuge and trickery to resolve things instead of handling everything with a sword.
All right.
And I like playing that character, so I really prefer rules mechanics and game systems that allow me to play that character and allow him to be just as effective
as anyone else.
As your big sword fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So we like hacking games.
We do.
So let's kick around some ideas on how we would implement this into Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
How would you do such a thing? Would it be blasphemous to do such a thing?
Of course not. I have an idea, and the idea is really simple. In D&D, you roll your die, add your base attack, and or your attack bonus, I guess, not just your base attack.
Yeah, attack bonus.
So you add your total attack bonus, and try to overcome their AC, their armor class.
Yes.
And if you do, then success, and now you can roll damage. A very easy way to expound on that would be to roll like your diplomacy skill, or your bluff skill, or your intimidate.
Yeah.
And that's all of a sudden your attack bonus. Done.
Mm-hmm.
So you roll that, and then you just create a social or mental armor class, maybe a will save.
It could be.
You could use the will save, and if you overcome, because in 4th edition, you actually have a reflex defense and a will defense.
Yes.
So in combat, you're trying to overcome reflex defense, and magical, like, domination and stuff is trying to overcome the will defense.
I think what we're trying to do, they did in 4E.
Except
to an extent.
Well, yeah, they brought in a will defense,
yeah.
But you can't really attack that socially.
You could if you house ruled it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think you should be able to house rule it and just say, your intimidation skill is your attack bonus. Roll your die, and if you overcome their will defense, and I think you should apply it straight as damage. They take hit points.
That'd be fun, yeah.
And because hit points come back with healing and whatnot anyway, so, with 8 hours rest, or a magic spell, so, maybe your mental social hit points recover in the same way.
Right.
And you could say the same cleric who has the ability to heal, mend a wound, has the ability to say some soothing words and, mend your bruised psyche.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes total sense. Because a man of the cloth, even if he is in steel,
mm-hmm.
That's what they do.
And it's actually a lot easier to believe that a good cleric could give you some courage and make you feel better than that he could repair that, severed arm that you lost. So I don't think it's too much of a leap to say that a, paladin can lay on hands and say, "Get back in that fight, buddy."
I don't believe
fine.
So. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Makes a lot of sense for the game.
Definitely.
Why would you want to have social resolution the same as physical resolution?
Because I think it should be interchangeable. I don't think you should get into a situation where, here's this villain, I've been chasing this bad guy for a long, long time, but the only way to make him stop is to stab him in the stomach with a sword.
Yeah. I like having more than just one option to overcome an obstacle.
And because, like watching Princess Bride, there was another way to overcome the bad guy. You can overcome him. You can just cower him with your intimidating gaze.
Yes.
And bluff him with descriptions of your awesome swordsmanship. And I think that should be allowable. And then it also opens up a whole range of effective characters that you can play. Because you don't just have to play the barbarian with the sword anymore. Because there are other ways to handle situations. You could play the sexy temptress.
Yes.
And you could, through seduction and persuasion and manipulation, you could just get the evil baron to give you his kingdom instead of killing him and then inheriting his kingdom.
Yes. That's perfectly reasonable.
So I think to open up story options and to open up character options is why you should be able to why you should have like a social combat thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think it's impossible to modify any rule system.
Oh, no, of course not.
So that you can put social combat into it.
Of course
If it's got physical combat and it has social skills or abilities, just use the physical aspect as a model and work out the social.
Absolutely. It's not that hard to say, to look at like D&D and say, my strength adds to my attack bonus, so obviously my charisma should add to my social attack bonus.
Right.
And my dexterity helps me dodge the blow, so obviously my wisdom, should help me dodge the blow.
Yeah.
And then you just extrapolate from there, and like every game has a combat system, so every game has a social combat system just waiting to happen, because all you have to do is look at the way the combat works and come up with a social equivalence of all those actions.
Yes. Definitely.
Which is actually what like Burning Wheel does, pretty much directly. Because in Burning Wheel, you can make like in combat, you can feint or you can block.
Okay.
You have all these combat maneuvers you can do. And then in the Duel of Wits mechanic, you can do a social feint or a social block. And it works the exact same way.
I think that's a rule system I'm going to have to try out still.
It's kind of complicated, but there's a lot of neat stuff in there. It's just got a pretty steep learning curve.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing but great things about the people that have actually grokked it and understood the whole thing, but I still haven't quite overcome that steep learning curve on my own.
I haven't even started. Well, I think we'll call it there.
All right.
Just to wrap this up, remember our email, sharkbonecast@gmail.com. Email us comments or topic suggestions. If you find us on Gmail chat, go ahead and hit us up. If we're on there, we will gladly talk to you. And that's it.
All right. See you next time, guys.
Bye.